record and everybody knows us much better. Let's go on and talk about residential architecture, and let me throw questions at each one of you. Starting from the first question that I have in mind, since we are in the pandemic, we are all, even though it is a Sunday, but I think most of us have been working from home, and the connections that we have with our residences has also, kind of grown stronger over the course of the year 2020 and 2021. So this mental and physical relationship that we've started to share with our homes and in our minds will persist, even after the pandemic ends. So my first question would be that what is this impact of worldwide epidemic? That how do you think that this is going to change the residential architectural discourse from now on? Like you can tell me about what inclusions you think should happen and are happening. And please feel free, anybody and everyone who would like to take up this question.
Okay, so maybe I'll start, Himani.
Sure.
So I think the pandemic in itself has been a sort of humbling experience for everyone. I think the single most, let's say, the most productive thing that I can say has come out of it is that everybody's looking inwards, not just within themselves, but they're also looking inwards into their homes. And the single sector, at least what we see with our business, that is really seeing a growth right now, is the residential segment. I mean, there is some slowdown in commercial and hospitality and so on, but the residential
No,
segment
एक
has
काम
really
करता
seen
हूँ
a
ऐसा
spurt.
चलो ध्यान लगा
So
अच्छा
I feel that um, I feel there isn't a better time or a more, let's say, a time that's going to see a more sort of catalyst, sort of amount of catalytic change in residences from here on, because everybody's looking inward. So that's something for me, which is a huge takeaway from the current situation.
Sure. Would you like to add something, Padri ma'am? Like, how do you feel that the architectural discourse, has been, now will be probably post the pandemic or during the pandemic, have become so connected to their residential spaces? So, how will the design industry be affected onto it?
I think it has become easier now to convince clients as far as our philosophy is concerned. Connections to nature, to have homes which have more space, and to look after their mental and physical health. It's become easier post pandemic to convince them. Earlier, it was more difficult.
Right. Right. Okay. So, the Pensa, I would want to ask you that, like we see that now everything has gone vertical, especially when I talk about urban scape of India at metropolitan cities. Now we're also facing the pandemic and it's all going vertical in any case. So when we are talking about spaces like, incorporating green into houses or incorporating outdoor spaces, how do we see that interaction happening going further, let's say 5 years down the line? Do you see that we would be able to incorporate that well as architects?
uh, I believe that that is not only in hand of architects. Number one, number two is it is equal responsibility of the developer, and at the same time there should be lot of change in the bylaws. There should be, because most sorry. So when we are talking about vertical, or when we are talking about any residential development, it is one way is the dream, where the lot of dreaming which is come across with lots of open spaces, balcony, good size of passages, lift size. The access is very, very important. Everything is on the paper. And when it goes to the FSI, when it goes to the builder, when it goes to the calculations, many a things is been haywire irrespective of pandemic or not. But definitely because the clients, the end users are now more demanding. And now that is what is the driving force to change. And it's a force from the end user, which earlier people were not thinking. And that is what where we may change a certain aspect and certain lot of details. So as Badri said rightly, that it's little easier for designer to make them understand that what is the need of the time, because people have realized, people have actually understood the importance of open spaces or the balcony spaces, because most of the time earlier people were having balcony but they were closing it. It has been then converted into a small office or a room. Now people have understood that what is the importance of such kind of spaces, or the bigger size of passages or the open spaces. Now what happened that in many city wise the bylaws are different, and it happened that some in some cities or some areas or some state, the open spaces has been considered into FSI. In certain spaces it has been considered out of FSI. So I believe it goes not only in hand of architect, but as a certainly, definitely as a fraternity, we have to influence on the authority or to with the developer, that how important such kind of spaces are. So in that terms, I believe when the spaces, common spaces, should be kept out of FSI, it could be really, really benefit for the end user, because then people or the developer tend to adopt such kind of spaces, which is very important. So I believe it is not only in hand of architects or a designer, but it is a combined effort from everyone, and that makes lots of sense.
Sure, sure. I totally agree with you. Also, if I talk about the materials that we've been using in such spaces, have we kind of shifted, post the pandemic? Have we realized that now is the time that we switch to sustainable materials? I know that, there were designers, probably firms like Bhadri Mams, who's been connected to the earth, but since very long, but it was very difficult to make a client understand why to invest into something like that. So, do you feel that it's become much easier now and people are coming to you saying that they want the use of sustainable materials? What have you been doing and the kind of change that you've seen? If you can share an example of a project with us.
Yeah, it has become easier,
Bhadri
I
ma'am,
think.
can I?
It has become
Yeah,
easier.
yeah.
And
So,
also, we have been talking that the future of architecture is architecture plus agriculture. Because you see, there's so much happening. Micro agriculture like hydroponics and greenhouse can play a huge role. If we can have hydroponic happening on the terrace of the building, which is actually in the high rise building, is a dead space. So it is going to definitely help to bring down the temperatures on the lower level. Also, I think having health amenities will also help in using the we are already using the agriculture land space, yeah, by expanding in the urban cities. So somehow we need to recover the agriculture land space, which will come on the terrace, and then we can also have amenities. And we all know that what happens with the developers is, to get the higher to get more floors, what they do is decrease the size, decrease the height, and that has a huge impact again on the mental well-being on a long term. If you go to see, it has a huge impact. People with this is again a research of the part of biophilic, that people who stay or work or live in spaces which have lesser height tend to become depressed faster. So that is a very big aspect. These days, we are also doing a lot of mass housing, where we try and give separate entries for our maintenance staff or our help who comes home. So we are trying to do all that. There could be some mandatory laws for terrace, I think, for the high rise, converting it into agriculture spaces or general health oriented amenities.